Welcome to Alpha Wolf Trading. Did you know that there's over 12,000 stocks or companies that trade on the OTC? Between the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange, you have over 7,000 companies. But us as retail investors, we wouldn't know that unless we were researching. Because why? Wall Street focuses on the elite, the big companies. And where the retail investor has their advantage is in small and micro-cap stocks. Why? Because you have the opportunity to speak directly with leadership. That is what this is all about here at Alpha Wolf Trading. We're trying to find the hidden gems, and we interview the executive teams of companies that we think meet the parameters to be those hidden gems. I also want to make sure you understand that this is not a paid-for promotion. I collect no compensation for the interviews I do here. These companies that I interview have been identified as potential opportunities for me and the members of Alpha Wolf Trading to receive a higher than average return on our investment. These companies I have identified either because of a technical setup on a chart, a fundamental change within the organization, new management team, new products, all kinds of different things that actually lead me here. But what do I think is the most important? Leadership. And that is why I do these interviews. I want to understand what drives the person that is leading the charge. I want to feel their passion. I want to understand their vision and the strategy that they're going to use to achieve success. That is what these interviews are for. I want to understand the share structure and the cap table, the size of the TAM, the total addressable market. This is the opportunity to learn all of those things. So sit back and enjoy. And if you learn anything from today's interview, do us a favor. Subscribe to the Alpha Wolf Trading YouTube channel. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. I recommend highly that before buying any security, speak to a financial advisor and do your own due diligence. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with a follow-up interview. One of my favorites. I love talking to this guy. We've been talking off camera for a little bit here, and now we got to get busy. POCI, ticker symbol, POCI, on the NASDAQ, Precision Optics Corporation, Inc., right?
That's it.
Forkey. Thanks for coming in, man, giving us an update.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having us, Tim.
All right, so let's talk about the start of the year. Start of the year for the company specifically, starting off a little bit slow, not anything catastrophic, right? We're just you've had some things happen with a couple of contracts. You've got some other things going on with other contracts. Why don't you, first of all, before we go there, give everybody a quick snapshot as to what POCI does.
Yeah, sure. So as the name implies, POC, Precision Optics Corporation, is an optics company. So we don't make eyeglasses, which we sometimes get asked. We make what I would call technical optical systems. And so that includes, in most cases, imaging systems, but also subsystems, sub-assemblies, sometimes individual components. We have a couple of particular areas that we focus on. Micro-optics is one of them. We make optics that are as small as 50 microns, which is about the width of a human hair. We also have a specialty in 3D optics, so you can be able to see in 3D, particularly for medical devices. You can see inside the body with three-dimensional depth perception. And then a little bit more generally, we specialize in digital imaging, which is the ability to create images on computer chips, CMOS sensors, what they're called, image sensors, and be able to carry those images for medical devices outside the body, but more generally to be able to carry those images along wires as electronics, and then to process those images in such a way that they can provide the information that the end user would really like. So those three focus areas, micro-optics, 3D imaging, and digital imaging, are the sort of specialties within optics. We have 3 different locations in Maine, Massachusetts, and Texas. We're about 80, 85 people. We work on programs as simple as an individual optical component and as complex as an entire endoscopic system with the endoscope and console and all the rest. Most of our work is in medical device industry. We've been expanding a little bit into defense aerospace. Recently we got to a little over 20 million, so we've been growing at a pretty good clip. So there's a quick overview.
So to really put a highlight on this, so you once showed me a camera in person, and I don't care what people think about what a camera looks like, but it was so, I mean, it was like so tiny, you almost couldn't even see it with your naked eye. That's how small it was.
That's right. Yeah,
right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Mind blowing.
So what I like to say is, you know, with things like that, the really small stuff that we make, those optical systems, the optical components, the optical systems, they're small not because of the light, right? The light that we're processing, that's creating the image and such, is measured with wavelengths of, you know, 500 nanometers, so half a micron. So these things that are a millimeter in size are not small from the standpoint of the light. They're not small from the standpoint of the silicon atoms that are inside of the optics, the silicon dioxide, right? They're small only because of the size of our fingers and the resolution of our eyeballs. And so what we're doing is we're developing technologies and techniques to be able to get beyond those limits that our eyeballs and our fingers impose on us, either consciously or subconsciously. And so when you commented, you can almost not even see this with your naked eye. That's what we're going for. Things that are smaller than people are used to, because we're limited by resolution of our eyes and the dexterity of our fingers.
And when you think about that, you think about what would you want a camera for that, like that for? What would the applications be?
Yeah.
Boy,
yeah.
Go ahead.
So the main application we have today is for minimally invasive surgery. So being able to go inside the body with very small endoscopes allows doctors and surgeons to do diagnostics and therapeutic therapies inside the body in a minimally invasive way. So, I mean, from a high level, most people know about minimally invasive surgery, right? The idea is, instead of making an incision and pulling back the skin and getting your hands in to do things, you use an endoscope. And so you make a small incision and you put the endoscope into that incision. There's a lot of work that's been done in that area with so-called laparoscopy, which is doing surgeries in the abdomen, and arthroscopy, doing surgeries on elbows and knees and those sorts of things. The systems that we're working with now that we're enabling allow doctors and surgeons to go places in the body that they couldn't go before, because the small size is not just a benefit from the standpoint of a small incision. The small size in these cases that we're supporting are required in order to get inside of the physiology that they're trying to get inside of. So there's one example that I really like to give. It's a company called CardioFocus that we've been working with for a long time. They have a cardiac ablation technique that uses a laser inside of the beating heart. And to get into the beating heart, they go through a blood vessel. And so the size of the endoscope doesn't just make the procedure a little bit better. If the endoscope isn't small enough to fit inside of the blood vessel, you just can't do it, right? So really, we're enabling procedures in places in the body that you couldn't get to before. So when you think about places where the incision size is really critical or enabling, you can think about things like brain surgery or ophthalmology, doing surgery in the eyeball, going into the ear because you have limited space there. Ear, nose, and throat in general, you need the size of things to be very small when you're working in the head. Cardiac, of course, as I already mentioned, some spine applications because there's limited space between some of the vertebrae and such. And then, of course, urology, cystoscopy, those sorts of things. The access into those locations is very, very much limited in terms of the size. So those are the places that we're using these today. There are some new markets that we're looking at in defense aerospace where there are some benefits to having small size. And we can go into the details if you want, but the simple way to describe the applications that we're looking at in defense aerospace is that any application that where you have a system that you have to lift off the ground, you would like that system to be smaller because it takes up less space, and importantly, it has less weight. So it's going to take less energy, less fuel to get it off the ground, to either get it into space or to get it into the air if you're flying it on a plane or a drone or something like that. So those are the places where the small size really has big benefit, and those are the markets that we're very competitive in.
So you and I shared, I sent you a video of a little drone that, and they showed some applications that I would have never even thought of, right? Which was like for an airplane, being able to go into the engine of the airplane and take a look at all of the parts and pieces within inside of the engine to determine what's wrong. I mean, when you start to think about the applications, I mean, right now you're medical and then there's the defense, but there's a whole other realm or a world where I can see your cameras absolutely playing a vital role. And the biggest issue right now with that size becomes power, right? Being able to stay powered up, battery, and then being able to transmit data.
Transmit the data, or you have to collect the small drone and take the data off of the storage. Right. It's better, of course, if you can transmit it, but in some cases where it's very small, it may be that the systems can't be made to transmit it because there's not enough space and power for the transmitter. But you can still store the data and bring it back.
I mean, if you look at big screen TVs, just as an example, right? I mean, everything seems like it gets smaller. And more efficient tech, right? And now you've got, well, you got artificial intelligence and quantum computers, right?
Yeah.
I can't see how we're going to go backwards. I think we just continue to move forward, right? And eventually the technology gets there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Everything's getting smaller. We're doing our part on the optical side. And really, we don't do just the optics. We do a lot of optical systems. So critical to that, part of what's driving the ability to make the really small cameras is the optics that we work on, the optics that we make, and some of the technology we've developed around that. But a very important complementary part is the small CMOS sensors. And I think you and I have talked about this before. We have a very good relationship with a company called OmniVision. People can look up. They make some of the smallest image sensors in the world. So the idea here is we make the really small lenses. We know how to put the whole thing together. We know how to get light into the dark places by using small LEDs, by using fiber optics. OmniVision makes the very small image sensor so we can convert the image from the optical photons into electrons. And once you put it into electrons, then it's just the size of the wire that you care about. Or if you want to do it remotely, it's the transmitter that takes the electrical signal and transmits it over Wi-Fi or however you're doing it. So there are some ancillary technologies that are getting smaller, even as we're making the optics smaller. And we sort of, we have close relationships with those groups because ultimately, if I can make a really small lens, but there's no other components to the whole system, there are some things I can do, but I'm limited. But really, as you were pointing out, the whole industry, right, the whole world is working to make things smaller, more efficient from a power standpoint. And so we have close partnerships with these other companies that are doing that so that we can build the entire system, which is ultimately what we want to be doing.
Which is awesome, right?
It's great. Yeah, we love it.
So let's talk specifically about the first half, right?
Yeah.
Give us some color on what's happening there.
Yeah, sure. So there's actually two things that are happening. So the first half of this fiscal year, our fiscal year runs July 1st to June 30th. The first half of the fiscal year was down compared to the previous year. There's two reasons for that. One is that the previous year was quite successful, where our revenue grew over 20% the year earlier. And so part of what we were seeing was a little bit of a pullback. So there were 2 or 3 programs that for which the revenue declined from the end of the previous fiscal year to the first half of this fiscal year. One of those programs went away, right? Now, occasionally, sometimes that happens. In this particular case, it was a defense aerospace program that we had talked a lot about, and we knew that a redesign was coming. And the customer ended up going to a design that made use of molded optics, which is something that we just don't do, right? So we're working with that customer on other programs. They were very happy with everything we did, but for this particular application, it made sense to go to a different technology. Beyond that, there are a couple of other programs, one in particular, which is a big, very large company, one of the biggest in the world in medical device, whose name you recognize, that we've been supplying a spine product to for many, many years. And they came to us early in the previous fiscal year and told us they needed to refill their inventory because they had run it down. So they gave us some pretty significant orders, but those ended at the end of the last fiscal year. They told us they're going to be back to us, in a year or so, with some more orders. But in the meantime, they're going to be burning off their inventory. So we had a couple of programs like those two that just pulled back from one year to the next. In one case, it won't be coming back. In the other case, it absolutely will be coming back. And so we expected that there would be a little bit of a reduction. The other thing that happened that frankly surprised us a little, but we think we have a handle on it now, is that across the industry, we're recognizing now of optics, particularly for optical components, the demand has softened. And we interpret this as really the long tail of COVID and the supply chain disruptions, because what happened is after the supply chain disruptions, when everyone got low on inventory, all the purchasing managers came back and said, I better make sure this never happens again. So they gave us big orders, right? And then they came back a little bit later and said, wait a minute, now we have too much inventory, because remember the economy sort of took off after COVID and then it sort of slowed down a little bit. And now we're still all waiting to see exactly where it's going to go. But there was this sort of bounce, right, where it went up and down. And so for the component business that we do, again, the first half of this fiscal year was weak because of some of that bouncing and that recovery from the pandemic. We talk with a lot of our peers in the optics industry. I like to say we have lots of friendly competitors, and this is really an industry-wide phenomenon that we're seeing when it comes to individual components. So all of those things together sort of led to the weaker front half of this fiscal year. What we've been saying all along, and we still believe, is that the second half of the fiscal year will recover. So the optics components business, we see some signs of recovery, not as fast as we would like, but we're seeing that starting to come back. But more importantly, what we're seeing in the rest of the business, which is our systems business, which is the bulk of what we do, which basically is to show our technology to customers, work with them on developing the design and getting the design in place, validating the design, and then rolling those designs over into production, where POCI continues to do the production. We often on our earnings calls talk about our engineering pipeline. And even though the beginning of this fiscal year had lower overall revenues, we had record engineering revenues. So what that means is that our engineering pipeline was as large as it ever has been, even though our total revenue, which includes the manufacturing of the systems and the manufacturing of the components, was lower than the year before. What we've been saying all along, and we still see, is that these engineering programs that were growing at a faster rate are now getting to the point where they're rolling over and going into production. And importantly, we're seeing plenty of opportunity for new programs to come into the engineering pipeline on the front end. So we expect our engineering revenue to continue to be very strong, and we expect to have new programs going into production to replace the ones that fell out between one year and the next, and even to not only replace them, but get to higher levels. So we've said publicly for the first half of the year that even though the first half of the year was a little weak, we expected the second half to recover and to get to run rates by the end of the year that were higher than what we had the previous year.
So the way you can look at the engineering portion of the business is that's basically your pipeline, right? I mean,
it is, yeah. So our engineering pipeline, we call it it's the pump that really drives the growth of the business. And we often talk about the fact that there are limitations to how large we can make that engineering team, right? We need to maintain focus on the core technologies of the company because we are still a small company. We can't do everything for everyone. And that means we need to have fairly specialized engineers, and we need an engineering team that has some cohesiveness to it because we're working on systems engineering. So you can't separate out the engineers and hire 20 of one kind of engineer, 20 of another kind of engineer. You need to build engineering teams. So having said that, though, our engineering team has grown quite substantially over the last year or two because we want that pump to be as large as possible. So we expect the engineering revenue to continue to grow as our engineering team the pump, if you like. And our engineering pipeline continues to grow with more customers and more programs. But in the long run, we expect the production revenue to grow at a faster rate once we start throwing out the programs from the pipeline into production over the long term.
Right.
So even though the engineering pipeline is the pump, without which you can't do anything else, the pipeline itself is not going to be generating the revenue every quarter. It's going to be generating the programs that then come out of the engineering group and continue to grow outside of the engineering group and the manufacturing group for a long period of time.
And a good example of that would be the single-use products that you guys have.
Yeah, so single use is very exciting for us. This is we could spend a whole hour on single use, so I'll try and keep it brief. But we've been making medical devices now for decades, and there has been an interest for many, many, many years and some false starts a couple of times by some people in the industry to make single-use endoscopes. The big benefit, of course, is that there's no sterilization required when going from one patient to another, because you use the product once and then you discard it. There are cases where patients have gone into the hospital for one issue and they contract a disease from a imperfectly sterilized endoscope and end up having that disease, in some cases passing away because of it. So there's been a big interest on the part of the FDA and on the part of the industry to make single-use products. There are other benefits as well that have to do with managing inventory inside the hospital, because you don't have to keep track of products that are being reused, being repaired, being re-sterilized in different parts of the hospital, et cetera, et cetera. And importantly, the surgeon then gets a brand new product with a brand new image for every procedure, right? They don't have to worry about the long degradation of reusable scopes. So there are a number of attempts at this. The thing that really made it practical is the advent of these very small CMOS sensors that we put our lenses on, that we put our imaging systems together with. And the thing that we're very excited about is that the single-use market is growing at 2 to 3 times the rate of the reusable endoscope market. So there are estimates anywhere from 15 to 25% compound annual growth rate for the single-use products. We started our first single-use product about 4 or 5 years ago. We had a great partner who was willing, as we were, to sort of jump into the single-use part of the market with a product that we both believed fit well in terms of the functionality that was required and the price points we could get to. The big challenge with single use is getting to a price point where you can sell it to our customer can sell it to the hospital can buy it, and then throw it out after a single use and still fit it within the reimbursement rate that's heavily influenced by Medicare, Medicaid, and the insurance companies, right? So getting to those price points has been a challenge. We worked with this first customer, even though neither of us was quite sure how we were going to satisfy those financial requirements, because those financial requirements become technical requirements, because you can't simply say, make me the best version of it using all the highest quality materials. You have to now pick and choose what are the real critical aspects of the system, and you have to keep in mind that price point is one of the critical aspects. So long story short, 4 or 5 years, we finished the development with our customer. We're just getting ready to launch this product. We have a second customer that we started with for a single-use application just about 2 years ago, and they're very close to getting to production now too. So you see that the development cycle has shortened because we jumped in on that first one not knowing exactly where we're going to end up. We learned a lot from that first one that we can apply now to the second one and others that are coming, we believe, behind it. One of the critical things that we did from a business standpoint, this is part of what we learned in the first one, was figure out how we can stay with our business model, which I just went through in detail, right? Where we engage with our customers working on the design, and then we become the manufacturer when the product goes into production, because that's what we want, is lots of products in manufacturing. The challenge with single use is that when we manufacture, we're going to need a markup. When our customer buys it from us, they're going to need a markup before they sell it to the hospital or the doctor, right? So there are going to be cases where the price pressure on single use doesn't allow for those multiple markups. So what we negotiated with our first customer is that we will either manufacture the product or we'll show them how to manufacture it, or a third party, and then they'll pay us a royalty for a certain period of time on every unit that's built. So that helps to solve the problem of having multiple markups with multiple margins, right? And we use a very similar business model for our second single-use customer. So I think we've been creative not only in terms of the technology that we're developing, but also in terms of creating a business relationship with these customers that's a little bit unique, but recognizes their needs, our needs, and the needs of the marketplace. And that's part of what gets us so excited about single use.
So just to clarify on the royalty portion of it, is it in perpetuity or is it just up until a certain point?
It's up until a certain point.
That's a bummer.
It is, but I haven't told you what that certain point is. Right? So you're right. I mean, it was a negotiated solution, right? So it's we would never accept a royalty arrangement like that if we didn't believe that the return on investment for the development work that we were doing was significant enough to warrant the use of our limited engineering resource to get access to this manufacturing or royalty. And again, there's no guarantee that they are going to go for the royalty, right? I mean, it could be that we manufacture this for 10 years, 20 years, but because of the extra financial pressure on our customers, we had to find a way to manage that. So even though it's in perpetuity, don't worry, it's long enough to make it worthwhile to do. How's that?
Well, I guess the way I could look at it is if you structure more deals like that, when all those royalties start to kick in from all those different, I mean that's like almost like mailbox money.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah, it's like staggering your CDs, right?
Yeah, and that starts to
keep going
after a while, right?
What's that?
That starts to compound after a while. You get 4 of those things going at the same time.
That's right.
You're throwing off some cash, right?
Yeah. Goes right to the bottom line.
Yep. Okay. How is the second half looking?
So we haven't released our numbers for the third quarter. We did talk about this about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and we talked about the fact that we still expected the second half to recover from the first half. And as I say, to come out of the second half with a run rate that's higher than we had even a year ago. So it's still looking good.
Okay. How are you sitting on cash, Joe? That the big thing here now in this environment, because of the rising interest rates, I mean, everybody, if you even have a hint of having to do a capital raise, nobody's going near you. And the deals that are out there are absolutely, they're vultures. I mean, they're horrible, horrendous deals right now. How are you positioned? Are you good on cash?
Yeah. So again, the results that we published about I guess 6 or 7 weeks ago from the end of the second quarter had us with $1 million in cash and $1.25 million line of credit. And this was all, from a raise that we did last June or July that was oversubscribed and at a decent price. What we've said is that we expect by the end of the year, as the performance, as the top line performance improves, that we'll be solidly EBITDA positive. And that's really the answer to your question: is we got to get EBITDA positive. We expect we will be in time to keep from having to raise money.
Okay. Right. That is the ultimate question. Also in the environment, I mean, you did an acquisition of the engineering company or a engineering company. You combine those two. How is that progressing? Is that pretty solid? I mean, the integration there is done.
Yeah. So there are a couple of pieces to that. So this was Lighthouse Imaging that we acquired about I guess about 2.5 years ago now. There's really 2 parts of it to be complete in my description. So there were a number of engineering programs that were transitioned to POCI or transitioned to the larger company, right? That we expected would have come online into production sooner than now. So from that standpoint, it's a little bit of a disappointment that those didn't go into production as quickly as we anticipated. One very important one did go into production at the beginning of this calendar year, and it's part of what's driving the growth in the second half. So we're happy to see that. Most of the programs did not go away. They just took a little longer than we all thought they were going to take. And that's not so unusual for medical device, right? The more important thing, though, and really, while these programs were attractive to us, the real reason we did the deal was because we wanted to enhance the technical base that we had, and in particular, the technical base required for the digital imaging part of our specialty that I mentioned. And we've talked a lot about this in other places, so I won't go into detail, but basically, historically, POC had developed a particular expertise on the optics side, meaning the design and manufacture of the lenses and working with fiber optic and LEDs. Lighthouse Imaging had historically developed particular expertise on the electronics side, on processing the images when they're in electrical form, doing designing circuit boards and building those kinds of systems. So when you combine the two, you now have a combined technical capability that allows us to move up the supply chain, up the value-added chain, to design and build entire systems. And so that was really the strong motivation for doing the acquisition. And in that regard, it's been very successful. I've said this many times. In fact, there are some shareholders I talk to who say, yes, we've heard you say that again, but I'll say it for this audience because maybe they haven't heard it. 6 months after we did the acquisition, we started with this second single-use program that I was mentioning just a minute ago, and the VP of Ops who made the decision to bring us on told us that he had been talking to POC, he had been talking to Lighthouse. He wouldn't have hired either of them individually, but as a combined company, we had everything that they needed. And so that, along with other comments like that, confirm that the market sees us the way that we thought we would be seen. And so that's very positive. The rest of the answer to your question really has to do with how well the integration has gone. The integration of the engineering team went quite smoothly. There were some ins and outs. We had 1 or 2 people who left. We hired 4 or 5 or 6 new people because there's been some growth. So that's all working just fine. The team is working as an individual team, all reporting to one VP of engineering. So they're one team working together, even though they're in different locations. We've updated a lot of our IT so that we have one IT structure. And importantly, not only for the engineering team, but for the manufacturing team as well, we finally launched our single company new ERP system in the first week of March. And nothing has crashed seriously since we started that in the first week of March. So that's good. There was a lot of work that went into it beforehand to make sure we were ready to do it. So from a system standpoint, from a people standpoint, the integration has gone very well. And I'll never say that we're done improving, but we're really done with the integration because people are working well.
All right. So are you happy with where you're at, or are you comfortable with where you're at right now? You feeling pretty good about it?
Yeah, for sure. I would have preferred not to have a weak first half of the year, but I would like for revenue always to grow linearly and up, or quadratically and up. But no, the answer to your question is we're quite happy with where we are. We understand what happened in the first half of the year. It's not long term, it's transient, and we see where things are going, which is really what gets us excited.
Which is a more. I think you're going to have more opportunities come your way, right? Because I don't see optics going away, the need for it. Right? If anything, I'm pretty sure it's going to continue to increase with robotics and all the stuff that we got going on, right?
For sure.
And the fact that your engineering pipeline is continuing to get filled, right? That's exciting because that just means those projects. Not all projects are gonna work, I guess, is the way of saying it, but some of them are, and some of those lead to royalty deals, and so the pipeline looks really robust.
It is, and there's 2 things I can say about the pipeline. The first one is part of what's exciting for me personally is to see the growth in the company, both organically and through acquisition, and to be in a position to take advantage of the increase in resources that the company has. And I'm getting around to your pipeline comment. The pipeline continues to grow, partly because we're hiring more engineers, but also because we've been investing in our sales and marketing team. And so, 4 or 5 years ago, our sales and marketing team was made up of me and one part-time VP of sales and marketing. Today, we have a full-time SVP of sales and marketing, and we have, I think, 5 or 6 people working in the sales department, reps and support staff. And so and while I go out and talk to a lot of customers, I'm not the one that's managing the sales team day to day, right? So part of what that's allowed us to do is to go out and understand better the market for medical device, which is where we've been historically, and to create a very significant, what I call funnel, which we bring down. And then we're at a point now where we can pick and choose a little bit the programs that we want to take on, because there are more programs than we can take on. So we have a pretty good, robust mechanism for evaluating programs, which helps us to put into the engineering pipeline programs that are more likely to come out the other side and to go into production and be successful in production, which is really a great place to be, I will say. The other thing that we've been able to do is to start looking at adjacent markets, and in particular, to start looking at defense aerospace. We, again, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, we were much smaller than we are today, and we had more limited resources, and we made the decision to focus specifically on medical device. So we didn't go to any other conferences. We didn't talk to anyone. I mean, we didn't call people in any other industries, because we had to stay focused like that in order to be successful. There were a couple of companies, particularly in the defense aerospace market, who saw what we were doing and came to us. And so our attitude then was, sure, if you guys found us and didn't take any of our sales resources, we're happy to work with you. And one of those in particular has turned into a very profitable, consistent, long-term customer at a few $1 million a year, which is great. So we know that there are some other opportunities in that area, and so we've started looking more deliberately at the defense aerospace market, and we think that there are some places where there are opportunities for us there as well. So all of that combined, being, having a bigger sales team going out to the medical device, seeing that there are more opportunities in defense aerospace, all contribute to the funnel that is keeping our engineering pipeline as busy as they can be. So that's very exciting for us to see that.
Let me ask you a question. If you were to say, to define your company, right? Or how do I want to say this? To find you, right? What would the Google search be?
Yeah, you're asking a question that our marketing guys know very well. It's what are the Google, what do they call them? Google search words, right? So it's I mean, the search words are micro optics for sure. It's micro endoscopes, optical medical device, imaging medical device, imaging systems, micro imaging systems, right? It's 3D endoscopes. I think we come up pretty high on the list. It's those kinds of things that you'd find on Google.
Right.
Now, maybe you're asking another, so it's another maybe slightly more philosophical question, which I sometimes answer, which is, I see our company as a company that's selling to our customers access to technology, right? In the critical piece here, we haven't talked on this call, but I've talked lots of times in other calls and such, and I'm sure we touched on it last time. One of the critical aspects of our business model is that we maintain ownership of the IP that we develop on our own, and that we develop when we're working on a program for customers. Now, to be fair, they're paying us on a time and materials basis for the hours of our engineers. So we have to accommodate generally some kind of licensing or some access to them for their particular field of use, right? So the negotiation usually is around how narrow is the field of use or how broad is the field of use. But the bottom line is we at the end of the day are a technology company. Even though I say we're an optics company, we're really a technology company. We're an optics technology company because we're developing IP, we're developing know-how, we're developing technology that enables next generation optical systems. And we're giving our customers access to that IP that we have, that know-how that we have, in the form of designing and manufacturing the product for them. And those are the customers that we're always looking for. In fact, there are times when customers will come to us and we'll talk to them about, our business model and how we work. And, we either want to do the manufacturing or maybe we talk about royalty. And sometimes they'll say, well, why wouldn't I go to this company in China that can do the same thing? And my response to them is, if you can find someone else, you can find someone in China who's low cost, who can do the same thing that we can do, or who can do what you want to do, then we're the wrong company for you. We're the wrong.
Welcome to Alpha Wolf Trading. Do you know that there's over 12,000 stocks or companies that trade on the OTC? Between the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange, you have over 7,000 companies. But us as retail investors, we wouldn't know that unless we were researching. Because why? Wall Street focuses on the elite, the big companies. And where the retail investor has their advantage is in small and micro-cap stocks. Why? Because you have the opportunity to speak directly with leadership. That is what this is all about here at Alpha Wolf Trading. We're trying to find the hidden gems, and we interview the executive teams of companies that we think meet the parameters to be those hidden gems. I also want to make sure you understand that this is not a paid-for promotion. I collect no compensation for the interviews I do here. These companies that I interview have been identified as potential opportunities for me and the members of Alpha Wolf Trading to receive a higher than average return on our investment. These companies I have identified either because of a technical setup on a chart, a fundamental change within the organization, new management team, new products, all kinds of different things that actually lead me here. But what do I think is the most important? Leadership. And that is why I do these interviews. I want to understand what drives the person that is leading the charge. I want to feel their passion. I want to understand their vision and the strategy that they're going to use to achieve success. That is what these interviews are for. I want to understand the share structure and the cap table, the size of the TAM, the total addressable market. This is the opportunity to learn all of those things. So sit back and enjoy. And if you learn anything from today's interview, do us a favor. Subscribe to the Alpha Wolf Trading YouTube channel.
Supplier for you, because the customers that we want to work with are the customers who need our technology and can't find it anywhere else, right? And the reason they can't find it anywhere else is because the things that we do are things that other companies can't do. Now, we can do things that other companies can do, but we don't want to do that stuff. We want to do the stuff that other companies can't do. And so again, providing access to our customers to that technology that they can't find elsewhere, particularly with the micro optics, the 3D optics, and the digital imaging. Those are the places. That's how I would describe us as a company.
What's really cool?
Company that provides access to technology.
What's really cool about what you just said, the CEO of NVIDIA, I can't remember his name, just said the other day, tackle the things that are extremely hard. And here's why.
I love it.
Because the things that are extremely hard will knock out 70 to 90% of your potential competition because they look at it and say, it's too hard. So they
exactly,
won't even begin the journey, right?
exactly.
But if
Yeah,
you can solve that problem, right? Your
yeah,
competition is right down here because nobody else wants to do it. Nobody else wanted to take
exactly,
that step, right?
exactly. Yeah.
And you just said,
I was that?
and you just said that. You said you don't want
Yeah,
to do what everybody else can do. You want to do the things that nobody else is doing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we're not going to compete on low cost. There are other places in the world that you can go if you want low cost manufacturing, right? Um, we're not going to compete on optical systems and optical technology that's been around for 30 or 40 years. We're not going to compete on making 10-millimeter laparoscopes, which has really become a commodity where, because people have been doing those things for 30 or 40 years. The place we're going to compete is exactly what you said, doing things that other people can't. And I remind our employees of that many times. And I even go so far as to say to our design team, our engineering team, if they don't occasionally fail in the design that they make, then they're not pushing the envelope far enough. Right now, to be clear, we don't want to fail a lot. but if we're not trying to do things that are near impossible, that get our customers when they come in to look at stuff and say, wow, I didn't know that you could do that. If we're not doing that kind of stuff, then we're not living up to our mandate, which is to do stuff that other people can't.
Which I think is awesome.
I have to tell you, I love when people come to visit us in this old industrial building in central Massachusetts with a not very, sort of nondescript building front outside and such. And they come literally from all over the world. And they'll come in, they'll sit down at the conference room, and we'll show them a little tray of these micro optics that they can't see with their eye, just like you said. And to watch the expression on their face is just magnificent. I mean, the people say to us all the time, I had no idea that someone could make optics this small or could make a camera this small. That's that. I love when that happens. That's what keeps me going.
It's mind
What
blowing.
keeps the company going, right? What's that?
It's mind blowing. When you showed me that thing, I mean, it was like that little speck of sand right there is a camera, right? I mean, it was like
Right?
unbelievable to me,
Yeah.
right? And I just, I know optics probably sounds like a boring industry, but I
That's
mean, it's
kind of
not.
mundane. Like optics have been around for a long time, right? But not stuff at the cutting edge. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like unbelievably exciting when you start thinking
Yeah.
about the whole world that could exist for right now. You don't have the capabilities. We just talked about it. So you got some challenges with power and being able to, but I think that technology, as fast as we're growing with quantum computers and artificial intelligence, the way that things will progress, I mean, we're going to see things, I think, in the next 10 years that are going to blow our minds. It's going to be like, holy shit. I remember watching that on the Jetsons cartoon, and now it's a reality,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, I look at this sphere here, speaking of an optics thing, right?
Yeah.
I see that thing almost every day and say, still blown away by it. It's just the most incredible. I could have never imagined seeing something like that, right? You
Yeah.
can't even describe it to people. It's just like you
Yeah.
got to see it in person. Then
Yeah.
you'll appreciate it, right?
Yeah.
Where we're going, I think, is super exciting. I think you guys have a clear vision of where you want to go, right?
Mhm.
The stock chart. I mean, I want to bring that up. Actually, my screen is not working the way I want it to work. That's okay. I'll put a chart up either before or after. I'll edit it in. Bottom line is you've held your own. The stock is kind of just, gone sideways, which is in this market environment is actually a really good thing, right? Because a lot of
Yeah.
companies are just getting smashed.
Yeah.
So, you're kind of just in this holding pattern. You're building out a base. At some point, something's going to kick where you're going to break one direction or the other, right?
Mhm.
I think knowing that you've got a stronger second half coming, and you've got some things in the works, some programs that could potentially come online, right? There's some hope for catalysts there. And then let's just throw in the fact that if the market itself finds some footing,
Yeah, right.
within the small and micro cap space, because it hasn't for a long time. That also, that will rise all
To
boats,
the
right?
overall environment, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there's just a lot of things that I think are I think we're much further along through all the negative recessionary and all that stuff. I mean, I understand we're getting indicators that screw with everybody and mess with everybody, but if you look at what's happening underneath, we've got manufacturing that's coming back to the United States in a lot of different areas. We've got chip plants that are being built in the United States. I don't think that's happened, and I don't even think we had any chip
Long
plants,
time,
right?
long time.
So, right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of positive things that are happening that nobody talks about. So, I think, how many shares do you have outstanding fully diluted, Joe?
I don't know fully diluted, to tell you the truth. It's like 6.5 million, I think.
It's not. Let's just put it this way: it's a small number.
Yeah, it's under 10 for sure.
Yeah, it's a small number. So really, which means it can be. There's a couple of things there. Probably in what do you know on average? What do you guys trade per day? What's your average trading per day? Do you have an idea?
Oh, I see. I mean, it ranges from 1,000 shares to 40 or 50,000 shares.
So super thin,
Still pretty small, yeah. I
right?
mean, to be fair, we uplisted to NASDAQ about a year and a half ago. The volume is higher than it was when we were on OTC. We did a reverse split when we got onto NASDAQ. I think there are some new people who have come in. We've been talking to a lot of people, so so the volume's higher than it was, but certainly we'd like to see it grow.
Right. So think about this from and I'm talking to whoever's watching. Think about this for a second. If you're a fund, $3 billion fund, and you want to take a position in POCI, you're going to use 3% of the fund. That's impossible to do, right? Without buying the entire company. So
Today it is.
Today, right?
Yeah.
But here's the reality of it. If you believe in the story, and it takes only one headline to send a company like this literally stratospheric, right? Because there's just not a lot of shares out there to go grab, right? So if somebody all of a sudden the light bulb goes on, a headline comes out, this thing could go to 20, $30 in the blink of an eye. I mean, and that's not BS. That's reality of it, right? I mean, there's not that many shares out there. So you don't have to buy a whole bunch of shares to have a pretty meaningful return in a stock like this with one good headline. That's all it takes, right? So I'm not telling anybody to buy the stock today. That's not what I do. Do your own due diligence. Go and sign up for investor alerts, right? Email alerts. And whenever there's something that comes out that is newsworthy, it gets sent directly to your. Do you have email alerts? I haven't looked to see if you have email alerts, honestly.
I'm told that we do.
Okay.
We have a location on the website. People can sign up for information.
Okay. I would go do that, right? That way you get them sent directly to you. You don't have to search every time, but you can just keep abreast of what's happening with POCI, because I think there's exciting stuff coming up here, right?
Absolutely.
All right, Joe. Listen, let's not wait so long for the next one.
I agree.
Let's do one a little sooner. Maybe when you have something you feel as though is a good talking point to just come back and do a quick one.
Good announcement. We'll get on and talk about it. Sounds
Okay.
Great.
All right. Hold on one second. I'm going to shut this off.
Okay.
You feel as though I missed anything here?
No, this is good.
Okay. All right. Hold on one second.
Okay,
Thank you for tuning in to another CEO interview here at Alpha Wolf Trading. Today we had Joe Forkey from Precision Optics Corporation, Inc., ticker symbol POCI. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, give us a share. How about giving us a like? All of those things are extremely important to us. and we appreciate you taking the time to do so. Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Trading wishes you the very best of success.